It's now my pleasure, my great pleasure, and my great honor to introduce to you our keynote speaker tonight, Joe Kahn. Joseph Kahn, as he's known in the New York Times biography page, was named managing editor of the New York Times in September 2016. That's the second ranking title in the newsroom. Joe has a long history, as you all know, of foreign coverage. He was international editor, deputy foreign editor, and Beijing bureau chief for the Times. That came after a long and distinguished career at the Wall Street Journal and other places. Last week, the Times was awarded 3 Pulitzer Prizes. That's a considerable achievement, and I don't want to take away from it in any way. But I think to the paper's fervent fans around the world, the Times succeeds every day in standing firm against those who seek to undermine the authority of journalists and journalism. And for that, we have Joe Kahn in part to thank. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to introduce to you Joe Kahn.
So, thank you, Deirdre, for that introduction. And I also wanted to, on behalf of all of us at the New York Times, take a moment to thank the Overseas Press Club for the work that you do to promote and protect journalists, including our journalists who work overseas. Deirdre and the Board of Governors and Patty and your team keep the spotlight on groundbreaking work that international reporters and photographers and videographers do, often at great personal risk, at a time when, frankly, it's easy enough to be distracted by the convulsions in our own country. And there is, unfortunately, no sign that reporting abroad is becoming any safer or any easier. There were at least 50 documented deaths of journalists last year, one of the worst years on record. Several hundred more journalists have been jailed to stop their reporting. So we need the OPC, now more than ever, to keep our attention focused on the risks that our colleagues are taking and also to help us celebrate their best work. So thank you, and it's an honor to join you tonight for this event. The OPC, as Deirdre mentioned, their Dateline magazine as well this year, is focusing in particular on women in the front lines. And it's an awfully good time to focus on women for many reasons. 2 of those reasons are the women the OPC is honoring tonight, Kathy Gannon and Kim Wall. They suffered in ways the rest of us can barely imagine for doing what we're all supposed to do, to go where the story takes you. I know all of us feel grateful to Kathy for all she went through and for what she continues to do, and also to Kim's parents for their loss, which is our loss. Journalism at the moment is under relentless attack, both here at home and abroad. It's under attack from the President of the United States, who almost every day presents some fiction as fact or dismisses some fact as fake. It's also under attack in many other places: Russia, China, Turkey, the Philippines, Hungary, Poland, Egypt, Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, just to name a few, where strong men silence, jail, or kill journalists, confident their abuses will cost them nothing. It is also under attack in subtler but equally alarming ways from the titans of Silicon Valley, who have tried to replace journalistic judgment with lines of code. They've asked us to hold on for a while until their work on artificial intelligence fixes the damage caused by their algorithms. With so many powerful men, and it is mostly men, challenging the core of what we do, part of the answer, part of the antidote, has to be more women. That does mean more women on the front lines, taking more risks to tell stories. But it also means recognizing women are not just changing the image of foreign correspondents from men wearing trench coats and flak jackets. They're also changing and improving the way journalism is done in more fundamental ways. Not alone, of course, but women among us often take the lead in finding ways to make journalism better, fairer, more transparent, more appealing, and ultimately more durable. There are many examples of that on the list of award winners tonight. I'll mention a few of them, and I hope you'll forgive me if I also go beyond that list and celebrate a few of the journalists working for the Times and other organizations who are helping point us all in the right direction. Among the biggest international stories of the year, the battle against ISIS in Iraq and Syria has been defined in large part by female foreign correspondents who set a new benchmark for reporting about war and its aftermath. Later tonight, you're going to hear more about Azmat Kahn and her reporting partner, Anand Gopal, for their work on the Uncounted Project for the New York Times Magazine. Azmat began her work more than 2 years ago. She just started investigating on her own. Her hunch was that the Pentagon's claims of pinpoint accuracy for its strike on ISIS targets in Iraq were exaggerated. She eventually showed the toll of innocents killed in US strikes was underestimated, not by a little bit, but by a factor of at least 30. This was data journalism, but with data that didn't exist until Azmat produced it. It could not have been brought to life until it was matched with hard, on-the-ground reporting in 150 sites in a war zone. You'll also hear more about Carol Guzzi of Zuma Press. Carol is familiar to everyone who's followed journalism in recent decades for her work in Haiti, in Kosovo, and most recently for her defining images of the innocent victims caught in the fighting between ISIS and the Iraqi army. Rukmini Callimachi is a New York Times correspondent who went into Mosul after the battle against ISIS had been won. The fighting, for the most part, was over. But she combed through the detritus. Literally, she went through the trash to piece together the life of women and men who lived under what ISIS called its caliphate. There are plenty of male war correspondents and investigative reporters who will stay a little longer, dig a little deeper, and press a little harder for the definitive human story behind the headlines. In the future, they can model themselves after Rukmini. I'm also really proud when I think of Dion Searcy, the Times' West Africa bureau chief, who spent months inside Boko Haram territory this past year, working where few Western journalists or diplomats dare to travel. She interviewed hundreds of Boko Haram soldiers, wives, captives, and victims. She penetrated one of the world's most secretive and confounding terrorist groups and defied threats from the Nigerian military as well. Together with photographer Adam Dean, Dion spent more than a year uncovering the stories of Nigerian schoolgirls who suffered unimaginable abuses from both sides in that conflict. From her base in London this year, Heidi Blake led the team of reporters at BuzzFeed who produced one of the most impactful investigations of the year, From Russia with Blood. That effort not only prompted fresh criminal inquiries on both sides of the Atlantic into suspected Russian assassinations, it also made classic investigative reporting engaging and accessible to a much younger audience. In one case, recreating the mobile phone of a victim of a suspected Russian hit so readers could experience the last day of his life. At a time when we're always being questioned by the left as well as by the right about our motives, our biases, even our standing to be journalists, we should look to the leadership of great foreign correspondents like Ellen Barry. Ellen recently completed her tour in India for the New York Times. For her swan song effort there, she profiled women who aspired to join the more modern part of India's economy, but faced a variety of obstacles. Ellen did not only show the story, she also lived it together with the women she profiled. She was not only aware of the impact a foreign correspondent can have on events they're covering, she carefully documented her own influence on the way her stories unfolded. Transparency in Ellen's hands makes for unimpeachable and very wonderful journalism. This is the Overseas Press Club, so I won't go on at length about the work of Emily Steele, who spent 8 months uncovering the multi-million-dollar NDAs that had attempted to silence women harassed by Bill O'Reilly. I won't talk much about Jodi Kantor and Megan Twohey, who spent half of last year persuading actresses harassed by Harvey Weinstein to tell their stories on the record. Except to say that their efforts changed, for now at least, maybe forever, the global conversation about what powerful men can get away with doing to women. And no one here needs much reminding about the work of Maggie Haberman. Maggie really does get everyone to talk to her. She reports endlessly and patiently and scrupulously, and she does that even while she's being trolled on Twitter by the President of the United States. My colleague, Lindsay Krause, wrote a story last week, maybe some of you saw it, about what happened when frigid temperatures, whipping wind, and frozen droplets of rain disrupted the Boston Marathon. In those conditions, men dropped out of the race at an 80% higher rate than usual. Women, for the reason Lindsay explores, were more resilient. Their dropout rate rose by 12%. Protecting and promoting good journalism is a battle that may not be won anytime soon. It's looking a lot like running a marathon in lousy weather. So we all need more women on journalism's side. Thank you.